The wind whispered secrets no mortal ear had ever heard. Twilight clung to the edges of the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and burning gold. On a cliff that seemed to float between worlds, Persephone stood alone, her eyes fixed on the dying sun. Beneath her, shadows stirred, alive with whispers of power and promises of dominion. Something unseen watched her, waiting for the moment she would step beyond the ordinary. And in that breathless instant, she knew, if she reached for it, even the sun itself could be hers. The first light of dawn spilled across the meadow, catching on dew like tiny stars scattered across the earth. Persephone moved through it as if she were part of the sun itself, her steps awakening flowers, coaxing streams to shimmer, her hair catching the breeze in golden threads. Birds fell silent as she passed, and even the wind seemed to pause, watching. Yet, beneath the brightness of her world, a shadow lingered, subtle, almost invisible, tugging at the edge of her consciousness. She felt it, a whisper from somewhere beyond the ordinary, promising secrets, power, and danger that no mortal had ever touched. In that suspended moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. And so did she, unaware that her life, her very essence, was about to change forever. Persephone had always known she was different. Children in the village called her the Sun Maiden, for wherever she went, life seemed to bloom and laughter followed. But even as she played among the wildflowers and sunlight, there was a part of her that yearned for something more, something vast, mysterious, untamed. When she looked at the horizon, the distant hills shimmering with mist, she felt a pull she could neither name nor resist. The wind carried voices she had never heard, not in songs or words, but in tremors that stirred her blood. "Come," they seemed to whisper, "come beyond what is seen." For she laughed softly, shaking her head as if to dismiss it. Yet the sensation lingered like the echo of a heartbeat she hadn't known she possessed. Persephone walked to the edge of the meadow, her bare feet brushing against the cool grass, feeling the life of the earth pulse beneath her. Even in this simple moment, she sensed that the ordinary world was only a thin veil, hiding vast mysteries and powers. And though she did not yet understand the magnitude of what awaited her, a single thought crystallized in her mind. Her life, as she knew it, was about to shatter, and from that fracture something extraordinary would rise. Evening came, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. The village fires glimmered in the distance, yet Persephone felt drawn away from them, toward the unknown paths of the forest, toward whispers in the shadows that promised more than mere mortal delight. Somewhere deep within, she felt the stirring of destiny, the quiet but insistent murmur of a world that was waiting for her to step into it, to claim a power she could not yet name. And as the first stars blinked open in the twilight sky, Persephone knew, without knowing how, that she was standing on the threshold of a life that would forever be beyond the ordinary. The forest breathed around Persephone, its shadows thickening like ink as she ventured deeper than she had ever dared. Each step carried a whisper, a pulse that seemed to guide her forward, yet warned her as well. The world above was fading behind her, its warmth replaced by a cold, vibrating hush, as though the trees themselves held their breath. From the darkness he appeared. Hades, lord of the unseen, ruler of the underworld. Not with thunder or flame, but with quiet inevitability, as if he had always been waiting for her. His eyes held the weight of countless years, dark and fathomless, and yet, within them, there was something that sparked a curious resonance within Persephone. She should have turned, fled, felt fear, but she did not. A strange pull, stronger than caution or instinct, drew her closer. "Persephone," his voice murmured. rich and deep, echoing in the shadows. "I have been waiting for you." She trembled, not with terror, but with anticipation. It was as though some hidden part of her recognized him, some fragment of destiny that had been lying in wait, patiently, for this moment. He extended a hand, pale and luminous against the darkness, and with it, a path opened beneath the ancient trees, dark, twisting, and impossibly deep. The first step felt like crossing a threshold between worlds. The air grew cooler, heavier, yet filled with a strange vitality, as if the earth itself pulsed with secrets too potent for the mortal realm. Persephone's heartbeat quickened. Every instinct told her to run, to retreat to the sunlit meadow, but curiosity, that irresistible spark, propelled her forward. With a final glance at the fading light of the world she knew, she stepped into the darkness. The forest swallowed her completely, and the shadows became alive. Whispers circled her, unseen hands brushing against her skin, pulling her deeper. The ordinary world, the laughter, the sunlight, the gentle hum of life, was gone. She was entering a place where light bent to will, where time itself seemed to pause and watch her every move. And in that suspended, breathless descent, Persephone felt the first stirrings of her true power, a seed planted by the unknown, waiting to bloom. The underworld unfolded like a vast cathedral of shadow and flame. Rivers of silver light ran beside obsidian stones, and the air hummed with the silent pulse of unseen life. Persephone walked cautiously, yet with a strange confidence, as if some part of her had always belonged here. Every step echoed, not with sound, but with a weight that pressed against her soul, testing her resolve. Hades led her through corridors where shadows shifted like living creatures, where the walls themselves seemed to whisper secrets of ancient dominion. Specters and guardians, pale and formidable, bowed their heads as she passed, acknowledging a presence they did not yet fully understand. Persephone felt a thrill. This was a realm of absolute power, yet she sensed that it could also be hers if she dared to claim it. "You are not merely a visitor here," Hades said, his voice soft but commanding, resonating through the halls. "You are a force that even this realm has awaited, but you must understand it before you can wield it." Persephone's eyes roamed the court. She saw spirits weighed down by their own shadows, echoes of forgotten ambitions and whispered regrets clinging like cobwebs. Yet, within this darkness, she felt something else. Potential, raw and untamed, a thread that connected her to every pulse of life and death around her. Hours, or perhaps days, passed in silence, measured not by time but by the slow unveiling of knowledge. Hades showed her the hidden currents of the underworld, the way shadows bent to thought, the way power flowed from fear, desire, and choice. Each revelation left her breathless, yet exhilarated. She was no longer the girl of the meadow. She was becoming something greater, something beyond the ordinary. And then, in a chamber illuminated by an eerie golden light, Persephone touched the first hints of a forbidden power, an ability to influence life itself, to command even the sun's faint reach. A shiver of destiny ran through her, a promise that she could bend both darkness and light. But with that promise came a warning. Such power demanded mastery, and mastery would not come without challenge, without sacrifice, without peril. In the depths of the underworld, Persephone discovered a chamber unlike any she had seen. A place where shadows glimmered with their own strange light, where the walls pulsed with a quiet, ancient heartbeat. At the center lay an orb of molten brilliance, a fragment of the sun itself, captured and held prisoner by forces older than time. Persephone's breath caught. Something in her stirred, an instinct, primal and undeniable, that she alone could touch it. Hades watched from the shadows, his eyes unreadable. "This power is not meant for mortals," he said, his voice calm yet charged with the weight of inevitability. "To take it is to claim dominion over life and death, light and shadow. It is a gift and a burden." Persephone stepped closer, her fingers brushing the golden heat. A shock ran through her, a surge that split the darkness and ignited something within her soul. She could feel the pulse of the sun, the rhythm of the earth, and the breath of every living thing. For the first time she understood she was not merely a pawn of fate. She could bend destiny itself. The shadows around her trembled, resisting, whispering warnings, but Persephone did not falter. She drew the power in, letting it flow through her, merging with her essence. A warmth unlike the sun above the mortal world filled her veins, and with it came clarity. A vision of herself not as a girl or a maiden, but as a queen, a force that could command both the underworld and the world above. Yet power always attracts challenge. From the darkness, creatures of shadow, guardians of forbidden realms, stirred. Their eyes glimmered with menace, their forms coalescing into shapes that twisted and snarled, intent on testing her. Persephone's pulse quickened, but fear had no hold. She had crossed the threshold. With a voice that rang like sunlight cutting through night, she whispered, "I am no longer yours to guide, no longer bound by fear. I choose my path." A surge of energy radiated from her, bending shadows, forcing the creatures back, drawing the chamber into a storm of light and dark. The underworld itself seemed to acknowledge her ascent, the ancient currents shifting, responding to her awakening. Persephone had claimed the forbidden power, not recklessly, but with purpose, with mastery beginning to take root in her soul. For the first time, she truly saw herself as more than mortal, more than a fleeting springtime maiden. She was a queen in waiting, a force that could steal the sun, command the shadows, and redefine what it meant to stand between worlds. And in that instant, the underworld whispered its acknowledgement. A new era had begun, one where Persephone was no longer merely part of the story. She was the story. The underworld had never felt so alive. Every shadow, every flicker of flame seemed to bow to her presence. Persephone walked through its halls with a new certainty, her steps echoing like the pulse of destiny itself. No longer the frightened girl of the meadow, no longer merely Hades' captive, she had become something the world had never seen. A queen of power, of life and death, of darkness and light. She approached the throne, an obsidian seat carved from the very bones of the earth, and placed her hand upon it. The underworld responded as if recognizing her claim. Rivers shifted, flames leapt higher, and the shadows swirled around her in reverent patterns. Every whisper of resistance, every shadow of fear, bent and yielded. Persephone was no longer a visitor here. She was its heart, its force, its queen. Yet mastery came with choices. Above, the sun still shone on the mortal world, and for every moment she held dominion below, she felt the pull of life above, of growth, of spring. Her gaze stretched between worlds, understanding for the first time the full breadth of her role. To command the underworld was one thing, but to bridge it with life, to bend the sun itself, was something far greater. She realized then that she did not merely take power, she transformed it, refined it, becoming the axis around which both worlds could turn. Hades watched, neither ruler nor master now, but witness. "You have done more than I imagined," he murmured. "You are not simply my queen, you are beyond all expectation." Persephone raised her head, eyes glowing with the light of stolen suns and the quiet depth of shadow. "The world is no longer ordinary," she said, voice steady and resonant. "Because I am no longer ordinary." The underworld shivered in acknowledgement. The sky above wavered, and even the distant sun seemed to falter, sensing a force that could rival its own brilliance. Persephone had transcended every boundary, every expectation, and in doing so she had become legend. Shadows whispered her name, rivers sang of her ascent, and life itself waited in awe for the queen who now ruled both worlds. No longer a maiden, no longer merely a mortal, she was Persephone, the queen who stole the sun, a force of nature, a master of destiny, a being who had stepped beyond the ordinary and into eternity. The underworld and the world above no longer existed as separate realms. They pulsed together, intertwined by her will. Persephone moved between them with effortless grace, her presence a bridge of shadow and sunlight, death and life. Rivers glowed beneath the earth while blossoms trembled in springtime meadows, all attuned to her rhythm. Every heartbeat of the world resonated with hers, a living symphony of power beyond the ordinary. Seasons shifted at her command. Winter retreated in awe, yielding to the blooms of spring. Yet, even in its absence, it whispered respect. Summer and autumn danced in cycles she shaped with a mere thought, blending warmth and decay, life and impermanence. The world itself had become a reflection of her mastery, balanced, unpredictable, and breathtakingly alive. In the underworld, shadows no longer feared her, they revered her. Spirits, once bound by ancient laws and long-forgotten regrets, bent willingly to her presence, finding in her guidance a freedom they had never known. And yet, even with all this dominion, Persephone carried within her the memory of mortal simplicity. The meadow, the wind, the sunlight on her skin. It reminded her that power without wisdom was hollow, and she had become the living embodiment of both. The sun, once distant and untouchable, now lingered in the sky as if acknowledging her claim. The moon rose in silent admiration, and the stars shimmered brighter, each pulse of light a tribute to her eternal dance. Mortals whispered her name in awe, sensing her influence even if they could not see her. Persephone had become legend, myth, and force all at once, a queen not bound by one realm, but by the infinite threads of existence itself. And in the quiet moments when the world seemed to pause to honor her, she smiled. For she knew this truth. Power was not merely taken, nor was destiny merely followed. It was shaped, claimed, and danced with, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. Persephone, the queen who stole the sun, was eternal, and in her eternal dance the ordinary world had ceased to exist, replaced by something sublime, unstoppable, and utterly magnificent. The sun returned to the sky, but it never forgot her hands. Since that moment, light has carried hesitation, and darkness has learned restraint. Seasons no longer turn by chance. They wait, they listen. Somewhere between worlds, Persephone remains, not as a captive, not as a ruler, but as the choice that changed everything. And the world endures, balanced by the one who once dared to steal the sun. Some stories do not end, they stay. If this one followed you into the quiet, then you already understand. The ordinary was never meant to hold you. Remain here, where shadows speak softly and legends are still awake.